All right, let's transition because we're getting ready. We're going to get back to this kind of spirited conversation about what is old is it really what's
Uh-huh.
new and trying to move the program forward. How optimistic or reluctant are you about like these traditions and what Nebraska's always done and trying new things to move the program forward? You just a let it rip guy?
Man, I'm not a fan, and I'm not really a fan of anybody. I was a fan of Ohio State growing up. I was a fan of USC as a little kid. I'm not a fan of anybody. I cover Nebraska. I hope they win, and it's good for everything. It's good for the Jet Award Foundation when it's good football happening here. But in the end, I've always thought the most overrated thing in terms of what we talk about is the top 5 things you have to do as a Nebraska program is the Nebraska way. I used to always joke about the Nebraska way. You have to have, you got to have these
We fought about it.
walk-ons.
I'm like, yeah, I don't
Yeah, I
even
know.
know what
I
it
like the
is.
Nebraska way. I'm like, I don't need it. So listen, the food needs to be better, bro. Whenever we have chili and cinnamon rolls, I walk my butt or get in the elevator and go down and get some food. And the food's not good in the stadium. Okay, it's just not. And so that needs to be better. That can't be. People talk about wanting to help the fans by giving them better games with Tennessee. How about giving them something better to eat? That's what I care more about, the food aspect of it. But no, I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem with dropping the Tennessee game. I really don't. I'm sorry for fans. But in the end, if you go 10-2 and you get into the college football playoff or however it works in terms of what's going to happen in 26 to 27, I don't care about if they played Tennessee or not personally. But I don't have a problem. I think you got to go and do whatever you got to do. It hasn't worked for 20 years. And I know there's some years where it did, but it hadn't worked for 20 years. So what do you do now? You got to change, right? You got to go a different direction.
You know what the Nebraska way was? Winning.
Walk-ons,
Winning.
keeping the same
No,
coach.
it was winning. That's the
Yeah, it was winning.
when,
It was definitely
when
winning.
people talk
all snarky severe is the best.
when people talk
Yeah.
about the Nebraska way, like they point to the pipeline and the walk-ons or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what fixes all of that, and we feel like we've got the Nebraska way again? Winning football games. We'll find a new Nebraska way with wins. I promise.
No, I agree, and everybody will be fine. That's the great thing about Nebraska fans, and I've noticed this since I've been here since 2002. I don't care what it is; they'll convince themselves that it's a good thing if you just give them a little bit of time. That's what hiring coaches. That's what making changes doing. They will eventually say to you, "Oh yeah, that's right. It's perfect. It's the best thing we could have gotten done." That's what Nebraska fans do. And that's great. That's what fans do. They accept. They move on.
Tougher job as we talk today. Troy Dannon or Matt Rhule?
Oh, it's Matt Rhule. I mean, first of all, Troy Dannon's really good. I mean, it's kind of scary when you sit there, you listen to him. We were at the Outland Trophy, and he did a solid 7 minutes with no notes, and I went, "Oh my God, that dude is really good." But it is Matt Rhule because look, everything's against him, right? I mean, everything is. He's in this deep conference now with so many good teams. It doesn't seem like he can get the number 1 or 2 when it talks about coming out of the portal. Maybe he gets the 3 or 4 guy, but he can't get the 1 or 2, which kind of hurts in a way. There's so much expectation here. It's crazy. People are already talking about if he goes 6-6 or 7-5, should he be on the hot seat next year? I mean, it's a hard job, and I wish him all the luck in the world. But I mean, if I was going to put some odds on, it's about 2 plus 230 that he survives.
What?
Yeah, I mean, I talk to a lot of people. Like, I get to talk to some money people now and stuff, and I'm so surprised how disappointed they are over progress. I don't know what they expect. I don't get it sometimes, man. I'm like, dude, relax. He's got a quarterback going into his sophomore year, then his junior year. Talk to me after that guy plays those 2 years. Let me see what happens then. But they are just, man, people are haters, man. Haters. It's crazy.
Yeah, I wonder how much time of the year when you talk to somebody has to do with that, Like
after the Indiana game, let me tell you, that time of year wasn't good.
Sure, I get it. Like in football season is probably the worst time to ask that question. Not saying you, but it's like the worst time to ask that question because you're in it and you're upset and you're disappointed or whatever. But I feel like by the time we get to July or August every year, everybody's pretty optimistic. Like to your point about Nebraska fans, right? We kind of talk ourselves into everything. So I do wonder like how much when you ask that question has to do with how people feel about it. But I do like, I don't know necessarily about what the money people think, but what, as somebody who is fairly objective about this, Michael, like what do you see in terms of of measurable progress that Matt Rhule has accomplished over the last 2 years that if you were to go against the odds of him surviving, why would that be?
I think it's the culture that he's building. I know people don't love the C word, but I think you can really see it. And when you have a chance to talk to some of the student athletes, are they still student athletes? When you get a chance to talk to some of them, you can really hear the love they have for both Matt Rhule and the coaches and the program. And I think he's really helped that. There was a real negativity among a lot of guys, say 4 years ago, that I don't hear anymore when I get a chance to talk to the student athletes. But I think that's the biggest thing he's done. Plus, I think he's also brought the idea that you can once again compete in the Big Ten because of what happened in that game against Ohio State last year. And they got a lot of people going, well, you're only 3 points away from Ohio State or 3 points away from Iowa. All you got to do is try to get in the top four. I think he's kind of brought that feeling that for some people, for some fans, that they're on the right track, which, I mean, remember how it felt in 2022, man. I mean, it felt miserable here, and I don't think the feeling's like that anymore.
Mm. That's our guy, Michael Severe, who I will not call apostrophe. I haven't earned it.
All right there, Lulla.
The best impromptu call ever, man. Always a pleasure.
All right, talk to you guys later.
Appreciate it, Michael.
It's funny. It's funny. He talks about the culture. It's number one. There's a couple things that I love. Number one, he's very protective of the brand. Remember, one of my famous rants about Coach Rhule was, I love the fact that all he wants is for people to be as
excited about
Nebraska and love Nebraska as much as he does. Like that's, and we have to remember, love doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want to do. It's actually just the opposite.
Correct.
Real love is, I want to discipline you and I want the best for you. So I'm going to probably do some things that may come across as a little,
and things you probably don't even want to do.
Things that come across as unloving.
Yeah.
But if I really didn't love you, I wouldn't care what you
I'd just let you do whatever you want.
Right. I just turn you over to yourself.
You see that with parenting all the time, right?
100%. So I like that. The other thing is, this is just yesterday. So there's a couple of guys that hit it. I'm just going to tell the story. So Donovan Jones he's got I think the fastest mile per hour right now.
Okay.
I think he hit 21.95.
Okay.
Caleb called last night. He's like, hey, if you come up, you're going to see my name scroll. I hit 21.92 twice. It's the second fastest of the winter. So I pause, and it's 8:30 or whatever. And he doesn't call just to. Yeah. First of all, he doesn't call. So I felt like that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, how you feeling? And he's like, man, life is good. He goes, my relationship with God is good. I love my teammates. He's talking about Donnie and Van Pop and some of these guys. And he said, school is good. He said, I'm out in front. So I was like, oh, I wanted to go back to the 21.92. I'm like, so twice now. He's like, Dad, this is him saying this to me. He's like, Dad, I got a lot of work to do. It came with a price. I'm a little sore the last couple of days. We got mat drills in the morning. I was like, goodbye. No, I'm dead serious. I'm gonna poke holes at me because I had to be honest, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, man, okay.
Yeah.
Holler at your boy. See you this weekend.
Yeah.
I hung up. I thought about it for like 30 minutes because I'm flipping back and forth between games. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna ride with that because just earlier in the day, we were having these conversations about not believing the hype. Just go to work. Whether you're on staff, whether you're a player, just go to work. Like, that's just one thing. Move on. And the other thing is, when I said, what did I say you got to be able to learn to do, even if it's at your own expense, if you want to turn the corner as a team?
When was this?
You got to be able to cheer for your teammates.
Oh, yeah. Cheer for people.
You got to be able to cheer for people that do what you do. He couldn't have been happier for
Donovan.
Yeah.
Well, it's like what Matt Painter said. You want to see Mike Woodson succeed at Indiana.
It's like, and he's like, yeah, in the morning, this, that, and the other. There's a couple guys we want to get going. It was just so other-centered, and it was exactly what his coach preaches. He says it to the staff. He says it to the players. Don't worry about what the past thing is. Worry about what the next thing is. Well, and he's already conditioned. He cut me off, like killed my joy, but he was right.
Yeah. You know what stuck out to me from that is, hey, the 21-9-2, that's not the end goal.
Yeah, and
that's not the win.
And he wanted to remind me, like, to move on.
Yeah, that's not the win.
I'm not even belaboring the point. I just want to go back to the revision.
The 21-9-2 might let you get to the win, but it's not the win.
You know, and I asked about a couple of guys. And one's not going to be very popular because the fan base gets mad at him. But I'm a big Hartsock guy. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Dad, man, like
he's endured in some less than ideal conditions.
Like, he said he's so dialed, it's cool to watch because they hang out. And he goes, he really wants this to be a big spring because he finally feels good. Yeah. He's also talking about another guy that's in the secondary.
Yeah.
From a position
that could very well play some of the same snaps that he.
I'm like, there's movement up front. Listen, I'm telling
it's stirring. There's something stirring.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You need a Van Poppel to go watch Tyson Terry.
Mm-hmm.
You do.
Yeah.
If you can do that and you can listen to the instruction that your coaches are telling you about insulating yourself from
outside noise,
praise and false gods and whatnot, you got a chance. Hey, BC, let me ask you something because you've covered all facets of this. You've had a pen and paper. You've done the typewriter. You still can use a recorder, and now you're kind of on a computer screen and a keyboard. This was on the heels of Matt Painter was talking about the job at Indiana, and he was saying, you know, that we get impatient, and there's a lot that you kind of need to look at what the constants are on why things haven't succeeded to take a look at where you want to move the program. And I think Ravi made the point more than a handful of times that people have made the correlation between Indiana basketball and Nebraska football. And from a media standpoint, and we've seen it with the changing of the spring game and, you know, busy Decembers and coaches being courted and, you know, rescheduling series and alcohol to the state. Like, things are changing, and a lot of the old is not going to be the new for the sake of trying to better Nebraska. What role or roles do you think media plays in being progressive in thought if the old hadn't got us where we wanted to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you do have to have grace on both sides of it.
Okay.
And by that I mean I have grace for the fans who are of a certain age, who remember things a certain way. And college sports has shifted so dramatically, especially in the last couple of years, under their feet. It is hard sometimes, for me included, to like get your head around it and be like, this is just so different from what I knew, like growing up and what I loved. And I'm trying to adjust to it, but it is difficult with this thing over here and that thing over there. And it just feels like so much change at once. And at the same time, that's paired with the fact that the program they love hasn't been elite, you know, for a while. And so I think maybe if one of those things, like if you had the elite aspect happening throughout this change, maybe that makes it a little easier. But, you know, at the same time, those fans are trying to adjust. The program is trying to get back to a level that it's been a long time having been at. And so I understand where people just feel uneasy a little bit, like certain staples that have been in their life are changing. And, you know, me, guys, I didn't make the biggest deal about the spring game, and they're not, you know, probably changing and not being one. But I'll tell you what, when I was feeling sick last week and kind of thinking about it, I was like, man, I kind of miss some of that stuff that you did count on, like it was on your calendar. And I was a little feeling bad about it because I was starting to think about it from the fans' perspective and how much, even if it is sort of a mirage of a game, there's something to them that matters about that being something in their life that they've done since they were maybe 8 years old and now they're 40 years old. So I have grace for those people. And then at the same time, long answer long, I have that for Matt Rhule, and the fact that like what he walked into, we're not talking about how it's changed since he went to the NFL and it got different from that point. We're talking about how college football and the whole setup and how you want to operate has maybe changed since he came to Nebraska like 2 to 3 years ago. And you remember like the first thing when he got here, he's getting good advice from Coach Osborne and people like, develop the program and like these in-state kids are important and all this stuff that is. But at the same point, he's had to shift, I think, a little bit with like his thoughts on the portal, and maybe you go a little heavier there. And then there's the 105 roster, and that sort of handcuffed how many people can have, and maybe change the way they have to in-state recruit and all of those things. And so I have grace for that too. Like this guy, what he signed up for 2 to 3 years ago, it's completely changed now. And so like if he needs to do something a different way, then maybe I would have thought like maybe you don't have a spring game. He might have a good reason for it because things are so dramatically different now. So I think as a media person, before you type something dramatic or go with a hot take about the Nebraska-Tennessee game or whatever, you do need to process all the layers to it and also consider there might be some stuff you don't know quite yet that you still have to learn as we figure out where this is all going.
BC, can it be true that we shouldn't do things the way we've always done them just because that's the way we've always done them? And it also be true that we shouldn't change things just for the sake of changing them if we don't have a concrete, real reason for it? Can both those things be true at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like the spring game, I take Matt Rhule at his word and various reasons why he doesn't want to do that or showcase his players like there. But yeah, I think you said it well, Ravi. I mean, there's some reasons to do stuff, and there's you don't want to just change something and say, oh, we're not going to do it because it's been this way, and what has that gotten you? I mean, there are some things that are good from the past, and I think Matt Rhule understands that. Like, look at like the day-to-day stuff. I don't think they've changed. Like he actually said, remember his Josh Pate interview last week, like he's doubling down actually on the process of like the stuff inside the walls and like the mat drills and like what culture building means. So I do think we have to be careful that we're not distracted by some of these shiny objects like the spring game conversation and say, oh, they're changing everything. When in fact, yeah, there are some changes outwardly that we're seeing, but inside the walls, I think he believes in his process and they're going at it times 5 now. That seems to be what he was saying last week. And so we got to balance that too, that yeah, there is change, but there's also some things that they're hitting just as hard as they ever have and that they believe in, that they're sticking to, and they believe are going to come to fruition now with results. And so there's that part too.
BC, let me ask you something. On February 26th at whatever time it is, 8:21, who has the tougher job, Troy Dannon or Matt Rhule?
Good question. I think Matt Rhule. It's not an easy answer though. Both have to navigate moving ground beneath their feet, and they both have to be able to make a decision and say, I believe in this, and whatever comes at me from it, whatever arrows there are, I'll take it, and I'm going to stand with this decision. And I think you saw that with Dannon last week with the Tennessee thing. He thought that was the best thing for various reasons for this program and this athletic department right now. And he knew he would take some hits for it, but he stood on it. And that's what you need from any leader right now. And I think he's a really sharp athletic director. I think if you talk around the country, people think he's one of the better minds in that field. And so I think they've got a good person in that chair. But I would say, Rhule, to your question, just because there's just another layer. There's just more of a spotlight on the head football coach at Nebraska. There always will be. Every little detail gets put under the microscope, especially when we get to the season and like how you manage the clock and all these different factors. I mean, there's like 150 different things that a fan could think about to like critique Matt Rhule on, good or bad, and maybe 15 that they could think of Troy Dannon. So that I think they both have critically important jobs, but that's the reason why I would say Rhule. I think there's more stuff people can say. I have an opinion on this about Rhule because of this than they could with Dannon, and that's why I'd say that answer.